let's take a look at bumps and divots. Bumps and divots. That's right, folks. And I have a little collection here of bumps and divots. These are my bumps. And these have divots with a bump in the middle of them. And so if you're drawing bumps and divots, there are some general strategies of how you go about that. And then when you're done doing that, you can eat the bumps, and the divots taste great too. So before I eat all of my teaching supplies, let's take a little look here at drawing the bumps and divots. And I think that you will, it's going to be fun. Oh, this reminds me, do I have one other teaching supply? I think it's going to be in here, or here. I'm going to look in one other drawer. Yeah, somewhere I had a golf ball, which is, oops, wrong chair, which is useful for drawing divots, and apparently making divots too. Oh, Daniel's got one. You took my golf ball? How could you do that to me, Daniel? Oh man. But let's play with this. I am going to bounce over to, let's go. This was me figuring things out about surf. You have to wait for that though. Now let's first just think bumps and divots in theory. So here's a little bit of bump and divot theory. I have an object. And I am going to imagine that light is coming in from this side up here. If I can lower this, there we go. So there's our light coming in. And if there is a bump right here on this side facing that, then the light hits the top surface of it, and the shadow of, that bump gets pushed down towards the sides right there. So that would not cast any shadow. The more that the bumps, so if the light's coming in this way, then I'm going to have, here's my dark side. The more that the bump is over in this direction, the more one side of it is going to get shaded, and it actually will even cast a little bit of a shadow if it's a taller bump. Let's go for, so this is no shadow because it's in the dark. This is here. This is no shadow because the light is coming straight down on it. Right before you get into here, that's where you're going to get your sort of most extreme shadows. If something is sticking out here in this area, in the shadow part, if it's close enough to the edge, part of the top surface of it may catch light. But when it gets too far down here, it's going to be all in the shade. So I have no shadow. I have no shadow over here. I have in the light part a little bit of I've got my darkness, and here in the dark part there are some that are going to have a little bit of light on it. So let's just make a strip. And look at how this would look. So this part in here, this is going to be my dark part. And I am going to use a little paper smudger to blend that smooth. Hold on a second. And I'm going to, right here along the terminator, I'm going to fade that in there. So I've got the part that is in the light and the part that is in shade. So if the light is pointing straight down on the bump casts no shadow. But let's actually do this. Let's give you a, we're going to put in 3 in here and 2 in here. This one here would begin to catch a little bit of a shadow, but not quite as much as this one. So on here, the bump that is sticking right up towards you, there's no kind of shadow indication that's going on. As you get to these mid ones, you'll find some where you kind of start to get a little shadow. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw the shadow, a little bit of the shadow side, and I am going to give that a little bit of a blurred shadow on one side. And I'm making it, let's enlarge this. I'm imagining a circular bump. And what I'm doing is I'm putting a little crescent of shadow along one side, and then blending that out. For one that's a little bit further in, I have a lot more, I'm thinking of a lot more shadow here. And I'm even going to come by with, this is a mono zero eraser. It's a very thin, skinny eraser. I'm going to get in there and just make sure that that side that is facing the light kind of has a nice bright surface. So it's a little bit more of a bump in your face. And then as we start to go in here, it's all in the shadow, but one in here, you might get a little bit of the highlight side. In the darkness. Now, so these ones here are making crescents on the side that's in shadow. And so those are for bumps. Let's now think about how that changes for divots. We're going to do the same thing where we have light coming in from this side. And this time, there is a divot that faces straight into the light. Let's put our terminator in here. We have the dark side. Excuse me. And we're going to make a little sheet over here that'll do the same thing. I'm going to have a dark side and a light side. Now, this one here where the light is coming straight into it, the light fills the entire pit, and we don't get any shadow indication of what's going on, just like we had up here. So for in the highlight area, there's no difference between bumps and divots. But then as we start to get out a little bit away from that, interesting things start to happen. So I'm going to give us two more. Now, remember on these first ones, the shadow was on the side that was away from the light. But here on these pits, let's enlarge this little pit. And the light is coming from, say, this direction here. A beam of light that comes along here is going to just hit the tip of that rim. That means that this whole surface down here, this whole area here will be in shadow. This surface here will not just be in light, but it will probably pick up an even brighter highlight in here. It's getting direct light smack down onto it. But notice that what that does is in here, that means that this surface here is going to be in shadow. This surface is more in shadow. And here, nothing is going to pop out because the light is just missing these things entirely. The divots don't pick up any highlight in the shadow zone. And then over in here, this one gets a little bit of shadow, but it's a crescent that is in the opposite direction that we've seen before. Here, this one gets a shadow, and it's a bigger shadow, depending on the angle. So this back wall of this can also be picking up really brighter light. So if we're kind of starting to kind of get a little bit into the terminator zone here, into this sort of shadowy zone, that little one right on the edge there, this upper surface is really bright.
And so the patterns that are made by bumps and divots on a surface those are going to tell you whether you're looking at something with either bumps or divots. It is interesting if you kind of look at these, for instance, here is, here's, is there any way to tell that this little bump right here is a light coming from this direction and it's a divot? Could it also be interpreted as light coming from this direction and striking this surface and putting that, and it's a bump that is sticking up? Yes, although then where the lights are and the darks are would be switched. But for what's happening on a bump itself, this, just something like this, actually maybe here's a good way of showing it. This here is, let's say I've got an object and there is a shadow here. Is that a bump with light here, or is it a divot with light here? Just looking at that, there is no way to tell. So if you're going like, I can't tell, you're right, there's no way to tell. If, however, I put a shadow in here on the ground behind this, then it has to be light from this direction. If similarly, there is just a mid-tone around the whole thing, and so there's a surface there that is then picking up even brighter light, then that would be light from this direction, putting this part here into shadow and the light hitting this surface here directly. So let's take those ideas now and apply it to two berries. One with bumps and one with divots. I'm going to see if I'm going to turn on this light. Do I get brighter? That's still pretty pale. Turn on a little light on the side here. That's not helping. I'm going to try one other thing to kind of change the light levels and see if that allows us to see. No, that makes it worse. All right, I was thinking to myself that we would see all sorts of highlights, and if I hold it up here, we can do that a little bit. All right, so right here, I've got I'm in fairly neutral lighting conditions. There's a bunch of lamps above me, and so that's putting light on these two berries from a bunch of different angles. But let's say I want to draw these and have a sense of the bumps and have a sense of the divots. So in each one of these, this is an aggregate fruit, and each one of these little dots you see on the outside skin is actually a little seed that is in a slight indentation in a divot. And in here, each seed is in its own special little packet, and each one of those makes a bump with sort of dark crevices between them. And the details of that are not really showing up on the screen very well. Let's start with the bumps one, because we did bumps first. And we're going to make a drawing of that. And I'm sorry that the full details aren't of the resource information here. Doesn't really show up on the cam here, but we will just make do together. So the first thing I would do is I would block in the basic size of this thing. So I'm going to be doing an enlargement of it. And I'm going to be doing it about twice as long and about twice as wide as it is, so that it makes a bigger, easier to see thing. So I start off just kind of with a little shape saying roughly I'm this size. And then what I like to do is I'm going to place these little nuggets inside here. And I'm going to start with just some of the ones that are on the side facing towards me. Say that this one is roughly in here. And the next one kind of butts up against that. And as it does in the surface where they touch it, it makes for more of a flattened surface. So these aren't totally round. Some of these have kind of angular edges to them. And so what I do is I look at those. And use those to place my original ones. And I'm going to go in a strip along the middle here, making those. And now as I start to kind of come out on the sides here, what I'm going to be doing is, here's the kind of the diagram I'm thinking in my head. If I have something here in the middle, on the sides, these ones that I first put in are going to start to obscure the other ones. So I'm going to tuck them, start thinking of tucking them around the side. So if I've got a shape in here, this next one, it's going to be tucking around and under these things so that this shape is in the front of this. And then as I get further back in space, I'm going to do another one kind of tucking at about this level. So imagine that you're thinking of, if you've got mountains and then further mountains tuck in behind those ones that are in front. That's what's going on here. But as you go further out towards the edge, here's the outside edge of this little fruit, maybe out here. These are going to get more flattened. So the angle that I'm seeing these bumps is going to change. So as I put this out here, I'm still just kind of placing in big, very bumps. These ones out here, they're going to start to, I see them flattening more. And I'm going to do the same over on this side here. So these back ones, that you just sort of see a little bit of that far shape squeezing across there. So these ones are tucking in behind. Now I'm going to think of a kind of a common, a light direction for this whole fruit. I'm going to have my light coming from this way, this direction. So that means imagine just sort of a consistent direction of light falling across this little piece of fruit. All right. Now I'm going to change my pencils. This is a mechanical pencil that has some fairly soft lead in it. So this is 2B lead. So it allows me to make nice dark shapes. Let's remember what bumps do. On the bump side that is closest, you can think of these as just a bunch of little spheres. On the side that is closest to that highlight, there'll be a highlight. As you get further away from that, there is a shadow. And if there's a place where two of these things come together, there's going to be an even deeper kind of crevice, kind of contact shadow as you kind of come down between these objects. And on this side of it, I'm not going to have highlights because the light's coming from here. So I'm going to just lightly kind of imagine where my highlights are coming in. And I'm just going to put some I'm just going to circle those lightly. I'm not pressing hard with my pencil as I do this. And also down here, I'm going to be out of highlight zone, so probably don't want highlight in that one there. But these ones here, they get highlights because the light is hitting them directly, and they've got a nice shine to them. You can't really see that on this one for some reason on the camera, but as I look at it, I'm seeing there are clear little kind of shiny highlights on these. And then it's fun to just, so I'm going to think of this in initially fairly simply of I'm going to have my value range is going to be, I'm going to first have my darkest, my highlight zone, my mid-tone of the fruit, and then I'm going to have a third value, which is just sort of punched in some of those cracks. So it's a 3-value system. And I find that simplifying things to 3 values is very, very useful because my brain can kind of handle that much mapping. But if it gets more to that, like if I were trying to put in 5 values across one of these little bumps, I would kind of get lost of like, where is it value number 2? Where is it number 3? But with 3 values, I'll be able to kind of go like, okay, I know what I'm doing. So I'm going to just kind of give some of these stronger edges. And you'll also see me starting to do something that I call snod grassing. There's an illustrator named Snodgrass who came up with a really cool idea of where you get these kind of deep junctions, like these triple junctions back here. If you kind of get in there and really kind of punch in some of those darks in there as you're doing your line work, it just adds this sort of this sense of real, additional depth. So I'm snod grassing my way around here a little bit. Here's some snod grasses. Over on this side, I am not going to be punching in those highlights. Hey, Veo, what is the technical term for this kind of fruit? Is this a drupe? Is this a berry? What is the?
Now that I'm not totally sure. Fruits are my one area of huge weakness when it comes to botany, but you've got me curious, so I'm going to be learning this after this class.
Okay, because we should actually do some geeking out with fruit, because there's like this whole like, it's a drupe, it's a berry, it's a peepo. I mean peepo, right?
Yeah,
How
just
much fun
for,
is getting to say peepo?
it's fun, especially when you begin to look at the the etymology with that, and then where it fits in with the whole pumpkin family and all of that. Yeah, peepo.
Peepo. Yeah. So we gotta like hang with some of our peepos. So now I'm going to look at this. I'm just going to go for a very kind of clear 3 value system here, where I'm going to leave that highlight white and put in the mid value, highlight white. And notice as I put in my mid value, it's the same pencil weight as that line that goes around that little spot. And so what that does is it hides the line. So you don't, if I drew a heavy line and then filled around that, you'd see that line. Right? So, but if you draw that line lightly, the line disappears. And I have a fairly blunt edge on my pencil, and that's why I'm able to fill these spaces rather quickly. If mine seems to be going faster than yours down here, look, these poor little ones down here, they get no. Oh, but you see that what I'm starting to do? Check this out. As I'm shading here, I'm actually leaving a little bit of light along this side. See that? That's on purpose. That's a little bit of reflected light. That is light that has come down here, bounced off the paper, and is bouncing back in here. But this is all one color. Sorry, one value. I really like the 3 value system. Because there's few enough choices that I can still make deliberate choices. And when there's too many choices, my brain gets overwhelmed by the choice architecture, and I can no longer say like, oh, I want to do this. Like, I'm just like, oh, and is that number 2? Is that number 3? I can't keep track of that many. Remember in the movie Amadeus when there's too many notes. I actually can't handle too many notes. So this right now is, I've got my line work with Snug Grassing. I have 2 values in here, and I'm about to put in the 3rd value. Let's see. That's a little bit better. All right, now for the 3rd value, what I'm going to do is put in this dark value in here. And so that's going to kind of wrap around here, drop down into this crevice, a little bit more on this side, more out in here. Essentially, if I've got a ball, the light's coming from this side, I'm putting a darker value on this side of it, if it's over in here, so here's just like a little crescent of dark around that side. But if it's further over here in this dark more, then I'll extend that dark zone up more. Like this. So it's mostly dark. See how that I really like simplified value ranges. Now these two need a little bit more differentiation in here. There it is. This one doesn't look like a bump, does it? Oh, it doesn't have its middle value. It was looking really flat. See, check that out. See this one here? It's looking really flat because it's just a highlight with a midtone. But let's see if that pops into 3 dimensions with the Meredith. Okay. Whee! Now, if there are parts that you want to stick up even higher than others, you can often do that by, if they're sticking up higher, then they'll get a stronger highlight. So if in here, if I make this highlight bigger, maybe make this highlight bigger in here, I'm going to make this here, some of this side that's getting more light. Pop those highlights a little bit. And there we go. Now, if I wanted to make this a watercolor, by the way, if I wanted to make this a colored pencil drawing, I wouldn't put so much dark graphite on it. I would be working these colors up perhaps with a black grape pencil and then bringing other colors into it. But I wouldn't do a graphite pencil drawing and then hit that with colored pencil because it will just start to smear all the nice shading that I've done. So colored pencil can smear your regular pencil work, but watercolor doesn't. So I'm going to turn this into a watercolor drawing. And because I've already established my values, what I'm going to do is just put a transparent wash of a blackish purple across it, and maybe get a little bit of some other kind of colors glowing back in that. And then I will come in with a gel pen or maybe some gouache and re-pick out my highlights. So I'm going to obliterate the highlights. So if I was just to leave it as a graphite pencil drawing, this is where I would stop. All right, I'm now going to put in some color on top of it, and I will lose a bunch of my highlights. But if I keep it transparent enough, I will still be able to have these nice darks. Maybe I want to reinforce some of those darks before I go. A little bit of snug grassing. Snug grassing is so much fun. And you also get to say snodgrass. Try it at home. No, really, try it. See, wasn't that better? Yeah. Yeah. I wonder what Snodgrass was like. Snodgrass was actually a real person. All right, so I've punched in some of those. Very often, I'll lose a little bit of my contrast when I put my watercolor over it. So that's why I went and reinforced some of those before. Getting a little bit of glare off of the lights in this room, so I just want to try it again.
with this, see if that is better. Oh, that is much better, right? So now you can see this is
my little object. Now, I am going to take some blue and purple paint. And I am going to bring that. And then I'll put this into a little bit more blue. And I'm going to bring in a little bit more purple in around the edge. And because I'm doing that kind of wet and wet, those colors are blending into each other a little bit. But you can see through, the, you can see through that transparent watercolor. And there are those bumps that I've defined. I've also made it a little bit heavier, a heavier concentration of paint along this side, and that's helped kind of pull in this dark shadow. But you can still see all of these little marks up in there. Now, if I don't add highlights on it, it will feel like these bumps are dull and not shiny. So notice that right now it's not looking really shiny. What's going to add shine to it is high contrast highlights. Notice that this, the whites in this on the bumps here are not super bright, but they are very sharp and distinct. So I'm going to put in some highlights. If I make them brighter and higher contrast, like you're seeing here, see how this feels shinier than this? That's because this has higher contrast highlights. So I'm going to put in some medium contrast highlights in there, and I'm going to do that with some gouache paint. Gouache is a kind of paint that is like watercolor, but it's more opaque. And so I have some light value paints here, and one of them is white. And what I do is I mix up a little bit of, I kind of get this into a thick paste, and then I'm going to test it off on the side here. And then I am going to, when it first goes on, it is going to feel much brighter than you want it to do, but it will fade a little bit as it dries. Sometimes that's really frustrating, but here I want these to be kind of subtle. And as I kind of come around the sides here, so I'm not really putting them into this side. I'm now going to put in a little bit of what's called reflected light. Remember, we've got a little bit of these lights coming back here. Sometimes we get a little bit of blue paint here. Excuse me. And I am maybe mix that with a little bit of purple. And I bring some of those into these, a little bit into the shadow side. I like a different color of reflected light, so it's reflecting off an object that is imparting a little bit of color to that. Or sometimes there's just sky color that's bouncing around where you are. Watercolor stays workable. I mean, gouache stays workable. So if I want some of these little spots to be less sharp, I can soften the edge with just tickling the edge with a little bit of water.
I've got some bumps. This will look a lot shinier if I bring up the contrast on those bumps, but I think I kind of like it the way it is right now. And I think I'm ready to do the strawberry. Oh, we're out of time. Right. And this was going to be bumps and divots, and we did bumps.
Well, maybe what we can do is just
A little section of divotness.
and so I'm going to just do a little zone of part of the skin of my strawberry here. And say I have some strawberry here, and I have, it's useful to think of what is the direction that these little seeds are going. They are kind of all sort of oriented down. This would then be something that so there's going to be my big strawberry. Now, there are several ways that I could do this, and I think because of time, I am going to do it the faster way. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to first do my little kind of a little graphite pencil drawing of this, and making a little line that comes around here with a little bit of variable line. And I'm going to have those little leaf sepals, right, Evea?
Yes, yeah, sepals.
My little sepal friends are sticking up back here. A little bit of a I just wanted to put them in because they looked fun to draw, even though it's a distraction from my demonstration. And they were fun to draw. Sorry, won't get too lost in those, but so let's see, here's my friend the strawberry. Now, let's think about how I'm seeing these little bumps on the side. On the side that is facing towards me, I get full frontal seed, right? And so I'm seeing that seed very clearly. As I go around the sides, they become harder to see as they are disappearing actually into little divots. So I don't, if I draw something that is like seeds all the way up to the edge, it's going to look, that's going to make it look flat. Because towards the edge, look at how they're kind of dropping into divots. Like pick one and follow it, and notice as it gets close to that edge, it is hard to see. There also seems to be some sort of a pattern to this. It'd be fun to get old Fibonacci with it. and think of how these are organized. I don't have time to do a really careful count here, but I seem to be seeing rows going in a direction this way, and maybe a little bit of it's hard to see what those lines do as you go around the side, but hey, the divots get hard to see around there, so we're okay. And then I have these lovely seeds, and they're making a pattern. So I'm not just putting in random seeds. I love to ask myself when I'm looking at a phenomenon, I'll say to myself, sometimes even out loud, like, is there a pattern here? What's the pattern? Show me the pattern. And because if I can find a pattern, then it is going to help me be able to draw what I'm seeing. They seem to be getting smaller as they come down here, but it's the bigger around this around the outer limits. So I'm just going to do this shoulder of my strawberry and leave the rest to our collective imagination. Now, as we're getting in here, I'm going to make these a little bit harder to see. I have a little hint that there's things going on in here. You know what's going on out there? I'm not really sure. So just a little kind of a hint that there's something happening here, but what it is ain't exactly clear. So you see how I'm keeping my pattern, but I'm getting a little bit more, and like, yeah, I'm not drawing seeds all the way up to the edge. Now, I'm going to do this the easy way. I am going to put down a coat of red paint across the entire thing. And I am going to let that dry, and then I'll use this gouache, which is opaque, to do both the seeds as well as the highlights on the edges of the divots, because each one of these is in a little divot. So for color, I'm going to eat this. Oh, that's good. That is good. All right, so what color is happening here? We say red, but double check and make sure it's not magenta. And this is actually looking pretty red. Then it's turning into some orange in here. A little bit of more orange in there. So orange turned into red. So I'm gonna have reds, orange, kind of getting into a deeper crimson around the side there. So I'm thinking like, what do I want? I want this zone in here to be a little bit more orangey, this part in here to be reds, and then that red is going to deepen around that outside edge. So I'm going to start with some orange. And then I'm going to bring in some pyrrole red. Maybe a little bit more, make that red orange a little bit more interesting. I'll give that orange a little bit more life. I've got this color in here, this quinacridone sienna that I'm going to bring into some of the orange in here. And then use that to kind of get into some of the red. And have that kind of connect together, wet and wet. Add a little bit of purple to that around the outside edge there. And then I'm going to blend some of this orange with some of the red. And that gives me, so I would do this entire thing. It's also, you know, thinking about with a little sort of lighter, brighter areas, the local color, and also bringing shadow into it. For shadow, I'd probably be dropping in my shadow violet, but that's more on this side, which isn't the side I'm drawing right now. So this is so I wouldn't ignore the shadows on this. I'm going to dry this. I've got a little hair dryer here. Then I look at it and I go like, oh, okay, I got carried away on my orange. You get a little bit of magenta in here and bring that into the red zone. I'm going to fade that into this, like that better. And one more dry. So now let's get divoty, right? The highlights on these divots. This is the really fun part. So look at how in the divot, there's a highlight on that flat area around the divots that you're seeing in here. There's a flat area around the divots and then in the divots, you're getting the real color, but it's paler up in there. And then you're getting that effect across the highlight zone of it. And then as it turns away from the light, you are only getting divots. Take a look at this right in here. Do you see what's happening? Remember when we talked about those holes where you get on the far side of the divot, on the divot wall, you're catching little highlights. You see that? Ooh. So that's showing up nicely. So I am going to, clean my brush. Paint, brush. Wow, I'm seeing kind of diamond shapes around, and then so it goes up and down. There's some piece of lint on the tip of my brush there that's making some weird stray mark. So cleaning that, getting rid of that. So now we're on the back wall of these divots. Light's coming from this way. The surface, the divoted surface, it's going to be at a slightly different angle that is catching that light. What does it do right on the edge? Hard to see, but there's a few little highlights in there, and I'm not exactly sure what they're doing, so I'm just going to randomly put in a few little dots of light. That dries. The color of these little seeds is a greenish brown. So I'll get some brown and some greenish, some gouache, mix that up on my palette. Maybe a little bit more brown. Notice in my palette here, I only have light values. If I want dark values, I use watercolor. And then I can drop these in. And I'm going to let some of the pencil stroke show around the outside edges of these marks so that that just sort of looks like a little shadow that they're nestling into. And looking at my highlights, parts of it feels a little bit too harsh. So I'm just going to take a damp brush, tickle those edges, clean my brush, soften that gouache edge just a little bit. And lastly, I'm going to get some very thick paint, white, and just put it in a few spots on the edge of this divot, edge of this divot. Maybe a little bit here on the edge of this divot.
And then I should stop before I overwork it.
But that's my strategy for divots. Actually, I could do one other thing if I. No, I shouldn't. I was going to see if I could draw some shadows into some of these divot holes, but they're not really that big that they're not really picking up shadows. I think I might just make this more confusing. But you see how you can kind of get this sense of the divots and the bumps in the divots. And that is I think that's a useful way of playing with these. Now I'm going to change my camera here. I hope that was useful. And so what you can do is look for things that have texture. And remember that bumps and divots are going to, they will behave differently in light. And you want to think of what is going on with them in reference to the core shadow on the object, how they're picking up highlights. When in doubt, just do some little doodly diagrams around the outside edge. Think, right, my light's coming from this way, so I'm going to have more of a shadow. So over here, the highlight's going to be over here. But on the whole object, these ones here are really going to get the highlight. These ones here aren't. Okay. And I think that allows us to play with those textures as we get into as summer approaches. We're going to get more of these on the bushes, more of these in the garden, and you can pick fresh ones, and they're so much fun to draw. Look for those little variations of color, like what makes a blackberry really interesting. Like this one here, it was mostly black, but I put a little bit of purple in it, with blues in some areas, warmer in some areas, and have kind of those colors playing out through it. And then that's going on in a larger structure that holds the that has like the core shadows and things on it. I am not going to be with you for, well, probably not going to be with you for most of the summer here. Through the pandemic, we've had 3 classes each week, but I'm going to be in a place where internet access is going to be iffy. When I get over there, if I discover that, hey, it's really easy for me to be online, I can continue some classes from afar. But in the meantime, I want to encourage everybody to just, celebrate summer in your sketchbook and see what you can do. And also take advantage of the incredible diversity and generosity and kindness of all these people who are stepping up in the Nature Journal community to share their tricks and secrets with you. I do want to reinforce the idea, even though in a lot of these sorts of classes, I've been emphasizing strategies about how to draw. That kind of, I've got to draw a pretty picture pressure can totally tank your nature journal, because then you feel like, I don't know how to do that. I'm just like, no, I'm just going to forget it. All right. Think of the journal as a place to learn. Right? I'm showing you some techniques on this because the more that those get automated, the more it makes the process of looking at something and transferring it to paper as a visual thinking tool, that makes it easier. If you want to make pretty pictures, the big secret there is to make lots and lots of pictures. The more you do, the faster you're going to get better at it. but let's not make a fetish of the pretty picture in the journal. There's nothing wrong, by the way, with making pretty pictures. And also, like, Ray Bonto has a specific book. I think this is a great idea. It has a specific book for, like, I'm going to practice drawing, right? And then when he's doing that, he's thinking that thing, I'm going to practice, like, here's my drawing technique. I'm working on the highlights and these sort of things. And then we go out in the field, and then there's pigeons, and they're moving around and all these sorts of things. Now you're nature journaling. You're using those tools which you developed over there on the art side in that art notebook to observe and be in the presence of nature and in the presence of wonder. And thank you folks so much for being here. Also want to send out a big shout out to my co-conspirator, Avea, the mad botanist in this. We both are going to, I know that we're going to be geeking out with some kind of trying to figure out some fruit names, and hope that won't just make us too droopy. So, love to hear from you folks. Thoughts, comments, and ideas. Hold on a second. It's weird. My screen is missing. I've either forgot. Oh, you know what it is? Zoom did an update. This is the new screen. I've got to figure it out. I'm having a hard time figuring out, like, where all my normal things, the normal things that I push are. If anybody has thoughts, comments, and ideas or things to share on drawing fruits and those textures, please raise your hand and we'll hit those first. And then we'll just jump into a general journaling share about any other pages from journals. Let's join the mad botanist. Yay! Avea, hi there.
Hey there. So I guess that you could say that was some nerd sniping, because then, I had to find out the answer to the fruits.
And did that make you droopy?
Yes, very droopy. So okay, what we have here are, and I'm using this book, by the way, How to Identify Plants, really fun book. So our strawberries are an accessory fruit, apparently.
Accessory fruit. So what's the difference between accessory and aggregate?
Okay, so an accessory fruit, it's with the strawberry, it has this really, really huge fleshy receptacle of yummy goodness. And the real fruits are the tiny little seeds that are on the outsides. And so it says here, accessory, a fleshy fruit like a strawberry made up of a succulent receptacle covered with several to many pistils, each forming a dry achene-like fruit, sometimes not distinguished from aggregate.
Oh, no, I hate it when they do that.
Me too. That's why I get confused.
And then
we have our aggregate, which is that one.
Okay.
Aggregate, a fruit with the receptacle not especially fleshy. Okay, with several to many pistils, these each becoming fleshy and droop-like. Oh, good. There's another term, droop. The blackberry and raspberry are examples.
So we have droops covering the accessory.
Droops.
Drooplets.
Yeah, droops that are covering the aggregate ones.
Oh, the aggregate, and then the accessory. And this was accessory.
That's the accessory. So it has a little drawing here, which is kind of fun. So this is the receptacle of our blackberry friend, droops. And it's a cluster of droops.
Oh, so in this one, each one of those bumps is a separate droop.
Yep. So that's what we call an aggregate fruit. And then droops are over here, because they like to make things complicated. So then here's our droop. And then, like I said, here is our accessory. So our strawberry is an accessory.
So the definition of droop is there's a skin on the outside, yumminess, and then a little seed floating in that?
I guess so, yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
You're right.
So that makes sense. So each one of these little nuggets is a mini droop. And then those are all together on a fleshy receptacle in the middle of that mass.
Yep.
And that is aggregate.
Yep, that's the one. That's aggregate, which is different from multiple.
And then with this one, so my receptacle has gotten super big, and that's the yumminess that I'm eating.
Yep.
And there are just little, so the seeds aren't in their own little droop package here. They're just bare and exposed like an akene.
Yeah, and the akene is the word for a dried seed.
Okay.
Little dry seeds.
So you need to pay keen attention to these sorts of things.
You're good. And some other day we'll talk about multiples. Those are the mulberries.
Oh man.
There's a lot.
I see a plant families in our food coming our way.
It is. In fact, I'm going to be adding this to series 1. I'm going to be reteaching series 1 this summer. So I'll be able to have a lot more information now. I'm not going to be teaching the same, like, I'm going to be adding to what I taught before, so that hopefully it'll be sort of like a new class because it'll have more information. So anybody who wants to
if you plant families in food before, this is even better, right?
I hope so. That's the plan. So yeah, if anybody wants to, please join me. I'm putting out the voting thing right now so that people can vote on the time. And that will be this summer. I'll be teaching series 1 again. And here's one free spoiler. Both of the berries, or rather not berries, I just said it wrong. Both of the fruits that we were studying today, the aggregate and the accessory there, our strawberry and our blackberry, both of those are from the same plant family. And that's usually the first one that we study. So we'll be having that. That'll be fun.
Wow. That's really cool.
Yep.
And if you can ever come up with a pun off of Hesperidium, I'm buying you lunch.
I will find you that pun. I will.
Right.
You know I will.
I'm throwing out the gauntlet there. Okay. So and folks, also just like notice how we're like geeking out with the names. Give yourself permission to go like full geek on these things, and don't look at them like, oh no, there's so many names. Kind of like we're going like, oh goody, there's so many names. This is like somebody in botany land decided to like articulate these different things, and because of that, all these words kind of give us a little hinge to kind of get in there. And like I love thinking of this as a receptacle covered with little droops. Right? I mean, that's fun. That's really fun. So, and if you enjoyed this, you're going to love some plant families in our food.
Yeah.
And mad props for the term nerd sniping. That is such a lovely idea. All right, now let me see here. I'm going to bounce over to the gallery view. Does somebody else have another? Does anybody want to get fruity with us? Let's join Daniel. Hey there. Oh, hold on. I'm going to allow you to unmute as soon as I can find where the button is now. Oh, here it is. There it is. Oh, it's still a big blue button. I just wasn't looking the right place. I think you can unmute now. There we go. Sir, it's
Can you
good to
hear
see
me?
you.
Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Okay, gotta get this out of the way first. If you don't mind my saying so, you did not answer my question about the basic colors if you're beginning watercolors.
Oh, that's true. And I apologize for that. I got too carried away in
Understandable.
So here's what I would suggest for that is I have a blog post, and maybe we can try to find it. We'll put it into the chat, which is about taking the Kotzman basic water color sketchers box and making a couple of modifications to it to make it a really useful thing. It will be, hold on, I'm going to find my pocket sketchers box. I had one sitting around here somewhere.
So it's going to be a little box this big. And it's a really solid little case that will stand up to kind of doing things in the field. And there's a few colors that the company that makes it that they put into the box that I'm like, yeah, not so much. So in the blog post, which we'll post in just a moment, there is a suggestion of how to take this kit, modify it a little bit, and then you'll have a good basic starter set of colors. On the inside, these aren't the paints that it has. This is, I've turned mine into another, oh yeah. Great, thank you, Susan. Let me just double check and, yes, this is the Customizing the Kaufman Sketches box. So Susan found it for us. It takes a village here. So I would follow the directions in that, and you can make yourself a great little palette. And then at some point in the future, you decide you want to kind of upgrade to more colors, and a sort of a larger system of colors. You will then have this little handy, very sturdy pocket sketchers box that you can then, I just took mine and used it to put gouache in and turned it into a little gouache palette. But that gives you a very good, an entry-level palette that I would be willing to bring with me if I were going on a trip somewhere, right?
Now, what do you call that box again?
So do you see in the chat? So there's a box that says chat, and it has a little balloon. I think it's on the bottom of your screen.
Yes.
Right, click on that, and then a little panel will pop up, and you'll see that Susan Beckert has put in a link there.
Oh, yes, I see it.
Click on that before it goes away. And that will open up a blog post that has, here's the Pocket Sketchers box. Here's how I would modify it to make it better and to make that into a really useful system.
Yeah, I see that.
And so that, and you can actually, if you click on that link while this meeting is still open, then that will be saved open on your desktop when this meeting closes. So I would just kind of hit that, that link. It will be open. Then you can go back into the Zoom meeting. And then after we're over, you'll be able to, that will be already open on your desktop, and it makes it. Did that work for you, sir?
Yes.
Great, great. That little system is great. The Pocket Sketchers box, very, very well made. There are, and it's not like one of these fussy ones. There are some basic watercolor kits that are, I think, they just feel fussy to me. Like you open this one little thing on a mediocre hinge, and then you take this part out and you hook it into here, and you take this other thing out, you hook it over here, and then there's a place you put your thumb through, and there's so many things that could fall out and to fidget with. This little system is just like, you open it up. This is pretty straightforward. I'm going to paint with this.
But you saw that earlier, didn't you?
Oh, no, I didn't. I did not. Oh, let's check this out. I'm going to minimize my screen. Hold on a second. And hold that up one more time. Oh, wow.
Now, Ureva said that it was in it's St. Mary's Mountain in Montana.
So are we looking out at a glacier there?
Yes.
Oh boy. Boy, the speed at which these glaciers are retreating worldwide is devastating.
Yeah.
It's devastating. Wow, that's really cool.
And also, I like the way you've handled these, the forested area there. I really get the sense of the texture of trees.
Mhm.
So this is, I'm seeing you're using different sorts of textures for the distant mountains, for the tree surface, for the water. And that really helps me visually kind of move my way and navigate around the painting. What a beautiful spot.
Yes, very beautiful. Wish we had more of them.
Yep. There's a couple of glaciers that are there's a couple of glaciers on the planet that are advancing. But there's like a handful of them. There's like 2 or 3. Well, thousands of glaciers all over the planet are rapidly retreating, and people are pointing those to those. There's a couple that are, they won the thermal lottery for the year, and they're advancing. People are like, let's see that glacier, it's advancing. There's no climate change, but it's this really disingenuous position by people. The people who are pointing to those must have looked at the data set enough to be able to find those examples. So I think it's I understand there are some times where people we have misinformation, or there are or we disagree about things, but when it's like a deliberate disinformation thing, in order to make those statements, you must have looked at enough glaciers to have found those, and so you must know, right, that this is not the worldwide phenomenon, but you then are willing to go on television and say, like, there are glaciers that are advancing. So it's just, some advanced, some are retreating. It's not nothing. Pay no attention to that man behind the curtain, right? Thank you for sharing that. And let's check this dude out.
You did see this, didn't you?
Yes, I can. And the way you handled the eye on this, I like that kind of color gradation within a little bit of lighter color right around the pupil.
Mhm. Yep.
That's a really wonderful raptor eye.
I can tell you, I really had trouble with the beak.
Yes. Yeah. And the reason that's giving you a challenge is because you've got the beak drawn in a 3/4 view position. If it was just side view, it'd be one thing.
Yeah.
But when they kind of turn their head like
Quarter,
this,
yeah.
then it becomes really visually confusing. We should, in some future class, just sort of play with that, some foreshortened raptor beaks, because you're not the only one who has kind of hit that. So where that gave you trouble is a place where lots of people have also had a big challenge with it. Sir, thank you so much for sharing your work.
By the way, did you get the spider book that I told you about?
I did.
All right. Good.
Oh, and it blew my mind. It is beautiful.
Yes, it is.
It is beautiful. I'm seeing if I can. Yeah, hold on.
Very helpful too.
Yeah. So this illustrated. So Mad points to Steve Buchanan for these incredible plates. So at some point we will do a class on drawing spiders. In the meantime, we can just take inspiration from this. Oh, you know what I should do? I should reach out to Steve Buchanan and see if Steve would want to come on and talk to us about drawing spiders. Wouldn't that be cool?
That'd be terrific.
Oh my gosh, that would be so much crazy fun.
I'm waiting with bated lips. Okay,
Well, just rubbing my pedipalps together in excitement.
Okay, you can get on to the others.
All right. Hey, thank you so much. Great talking with you, sir.
Yes, thank you.
Absolutely. Let's see. Now, Avea's got another thing to share here. Let's check out what's going on in your sketchbook. Oh,
Actually, before I explain this, anyways, before I explain that though, I just wanted to say, so I was trying to find some trivia about strawberries and found out that they have approximately maybe 200 seeds to them. It'd be fun to count. Whereas when you look at an orange, depending on the one that you have, that it could be like 10 to 20, I don't know, it depends, but either way, it's less per hesper. I had to come up with a pun. You made me do it. It's your fault.
I see what you're doing here. Lunch on me.
Yes, thank you.
All right, let's try to plan that before I go to Kenya.
Okay, sounds good. So you were asked, so this is the reason why I wanted to draw strawberries.
Oh, yes.
Because I was trying really hard to draw this one and its texture reminded me of a strawberry and I have trouble doing it. So that was my main reason for why I wanted to draw strawberries, which was really fun. So thank you for that. I've been trying to, I'm glad that you mentioned about how it doesn't have to be about the pictures. I've been feeling, I don't know, I've been trying to push myself to drawing more pictures, but it's been challenging for me because it feels like, I mean, I love doing art, but it feels almost as though I'm trespassing on somebody else's playground whenever I draw. And so it's been interesting trying to push myself out of my comfort zone to draw more things. And what helps me is to try to draw them based off of the birds that I see in the field. So I found that that's sort of my gateway. Cat. This one I'm proud to say was when she was asleep. And so I didn't have to do this from a picture. It's like got to do just from her sitting next to me. And then she got up and I couldn't finish painting her fur. So I just wanted to thank you for that.
Oh, this is so exciting, Ibea. So those, let's just bounce back to those birds for just 1 second, if we could.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, getting the understanding the anatomy of these little beasties is really interesting. It's this crazy topological mishmash of, you know, the birds moving in all these different positions, and then there's the anatomy on top of that, and then there's light and shadow and the pigment colors. And I love the quick sketch with the more sort of careful study next to it, and kind of getting yourself comfortable in doing both of those sorts of things. This is really exciting. And that one, it just feels so goldfinchy because it's in this crazy awkward little position with its foot up holding. And, you know, I've taught in my classes how to draw birds that are balanced. And yeah, go out and try to find a balanced goldfinch, because they're always just kind of up, down, this way and that way on all sorts of objects. That's really fun. That's exciting.
Thank you. Thank you. This was fun to find because the one I saw looks so different from the one that's usually pictured with the really dark back.
Mm-hmm.
So I was trying to draw ones that look different from the typical ones, just because we might have different ones where we live.
And just also mad props on the sleeping cat.
Thank you. And then I wanted to, this one doesn't have surf on it, but I just wanted to say I agree with you about cliffs being challenging. I'm trying to do vegetation on this one. This one I drew a while ago, but I'm trying to add the colors and the vegetation. And something really exciting happened recently. I was struggling with how to do certain landscape though. And so first I asked for help at Pencil Miles and Chill. And then I went on and asked help from the Facebook community, and people gave so many good suggestions. It's a particular type of landscape that involves being in shadow. And that for me is really challenging. And so this is just my first one. I'm going to be doing more of them based off of the suggestions that people gave. There was this one person who took my photos and then made a foreground, a middle ground, and a background, and talked about that. And then just everybody had so many different ideas. So I'm thinking about going through and just trying to incorporate them and try them a few different times over. But this was a particular restoration site that I've been wanting to convey for a while. And I couldn't do it on the exact day because it was so challenging. But it was fun to try. So I'm going to be trying to do more of them because I'm trying to do
these dense vegetation areas. You handle those so well. Like go back to that one where there's that cliff, cliff where you've done those trees over on the side. So folks, look at the sort of the move right over there.
So I'm loving all these different types of greens interlocking and playing with each other. Some wet and wet, some dry brush with just sort of a suggestion of those textures and a suggestion of branches. And then let's go back over to the other page.
This
Wait,
one?
no, the where you've got that sketch up there. So same drawing, but the pencil sketches. And then look at the different types of trees here, now represented with pencil. So in some places you've got the tree against the skyline, where the trunk and those clumps architecture are hanging out. Or this one where it's this massive clump up against the hillside, where underneath is this deep shadow, and you're showing the trunks by the negative shapes of the dark around the trunks. That is next level. That is really, really fun. And look at the shadows on that other tree that is closer to you, right by the page binding. Yep, that little one right there. So that little tree, right, higher contrast, higher detail than the other ones that you see behind it and over to the far left of the picture, because it's handled that way. It also pops into the foreground. If Ivea had handled some of those, and this very effectively reads as a deep tree, but because you popped this into, in the detail here, and it's this foreground tree, that also really helps us sort of see the depth in the picture. Had you done that treatment in the background, it would have flattened out your picture and pulled that background forward. So some really successful decisions there in making this landscape work. And I would urge against watercoloring the rest of that mountain back there, because I love having some of it with this pencil work and some of it with the watercolor textures. That's really fun.
Thank you. So thank you. I really appreciate that. Landscapes are an area I'm trying to improve on. So thank you. Just wanted to say that, yeah, you're not alone in certain kinds giving you challenges. So I'm working on that. And the reason why I'm doing that in the journal there is because I want to get better at, when I'm out in the field, being able to draw the landscapes on site. So some of these I'm going back to try, but then some of them, let's see here. I was able to do this one on site a few weeks ago. And then
go back to that one, those textures of that little look. Oh, so check out the sense of the light hitting some of these leaves in the foreground there, where there are light areas. Oh, this just feels like dancing light.
Thank you.
Wow, that Mustard Hill one is one of my favorite little landscapitas that you've done.
Thank you. Although I should warn you, it's going to look a little different, hopefully, in about a few weeks.
You're gonna get your. Did the tool come?
I used it. It was so magic.
Really?
Okay, so so last Friday we had to go along this entire area, which this might look small, but this is a pretty big area. I was out there myself for something like 4 or 5 hours, and we got 6 truck beds worth of weeds that we pulled out that day. 6. They had to continue going on and taking them. And so we were pulling out mostly these guys, and I got to make use of the weed wrench, and I was so happy.
Oh my gosh, that is, the restoration work you do is so inspiring.
Thank you.
So crazy inspiring.
Thank you. And then it gave me insights about different kinds of roots that I'm pulling out. I'll share more later. I've been talking.
So the radish has a single carrot that goes down, and the hemlock has all these spreading things. Does that make the hemlock more difficult to pull out?
By a lot. It means it's easier when it snaps. Like when I try to pull this one out, it can snap off really, really easily.
Mm-hmm.
And the same with mustard.
Does the weed wrench allow you to get it out with the roots?
It does.
Oh.
I was going along also pulling out some of the wild mustard before Mustard Hill, and my bosses didn't think it would work because they haven't used a weed wrench on that stuff before. And I said 75% success at removing the tap roots. Nice. That's huge. That's huge considering that usually the success rate is more like 10. So.
Wow.
Thank you.
Can you show us is the weed wrench handy?
Yes, 1 second.
Okay. Oh, this is really exciting. And so folks, I want folks to notice a couple of things that I think are really important here. So one is, oh, here it is. You should do it like you only can do a guitar solo with it.
Thank you. This is my new favorite tool, so thank you.
This is a gift from the Nature Journal Club to you in appreciation of all the wonderful stewardship that you're doing and the shepherding of this community. We are really, really grateful to you.
Thank you.
I see you really leaning into topics and things that are scary, and you're being brave with your journaling and pushing yourself. And that's really, really inspiring. And this is just beautiful work. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Thank you, Jack.
Yay. Oh, we're going to have so we will get together for lunch before I head to Kenya. Let's hear from some of our other friends. Ray Bonto, what's going on in your journal? Jack, you're up next, and then Susan. So I'm going to add in Ray Bonto and Arpan. It's good to see you both.
Hi, Jack.
Good to see you too.
Good to see you.
What's happening in your journal these days?
Yeah, this is the berries. I couldn't really color it because the pen was a little too thick. So yeah.
Oh, good. I really like the snod grassing that you're doing up there on that. On the, now I'm thinking, was it aggregate or compound? Aggregate, right?
Yeah.
All those little dark shadows at the edges of those drupelets. That's really fun to see.
Yeah, and
and then you've got the grid to help you place those little the achenes on the strawberry there. Nice. I remember that it'll be harder to see exactly which way those go as they wrap around the sides, and of course in that area we don't show them as clearly. So right when they get hard to see, we just draw them less. Nice work.
yeah, I tried. Remember that dandelion thing?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh.
I tried drawing it in white paper.
Oh, this is really fun. What a challenge. And I love the way you handled this. So folks, look at this. So notice that in the center, you can see through it more, but around the outside edge, the white is much thicker and more consistent. Think to yourself, why is it that you're seeing this? So what Ray Bonto has drawn is exactly what you see when you look at a dandelion puff. That you can see through to the core, and then there's this ring of obscured stuff on the outside. I'm going to sort of join you on the screen here for just a moment, and I just want to do a little kind of quick demo for people of why excuse me, of why you're seeing that effect. That if you imagine the dandelion puff is here, and in the center there's a little hub, and then the seeds attach on here. There's a stalk, and then there's the fluffy part. Is that the pappus? I don't remember.
So that means that the fluffy part is in this whole zone out here. So if you just were to do a slice through a cross section of it, then or if you kind of slice this anyway, you can find that more of the fluff is around the edge, and then the inside is bare. So if your eye is over here, looking in this direction, as you look through the middle of it, you're looking through this much fluff and this much fluff, and you're seeing right through it. But if as your eye looks through here, it's looking through this much fluff. And so you get this sort of thick zone of fluff. And as your eye looks down here, you're looking through more fluff this way. And let's now, I'm going to minimize my screen again, and let's go to, I want you to check out how Ray Bonto has observed this, right? So this is what we see. That's really cool. And I also like how you put in that background color so that as you are showing the transparency through it, if you didn't have green in the background, then that center part would say like, oh, look, there's a dark green thing in the middle. But because the background is green, then you realize that dark green zone that you're seeing in the middle, you're also seeing a lot of the transparency through there. So that was a very effective way to draw the transparency of that. Wonderful solution to a challenging problem.
Thank you. Here's some pigeons and stuff. Crows.
Oh, this is fun. Wait, hold on. Hold it a little bit more still so the camera will focus on it. Oh, and again, nice line variation. Walters and I will be doing a little investigation of the work of John Busby. And one of the things we'll be pointing out is the wonderful line variation that goes on in a lot of those drawings. And I see that in your work. It's a real strength of your sketching technique. It just makes the lines so much more lively and fun.
Thank you. Now we're getting fruity.
Now getting pretty.
Oh yeah. My mom decided to get me a very expensive soursop for the first time.
Yeah.
Yes. Now I had to use my calculator because I forgot to weigh it before I ate it. And so I remember the price per kilo, and I remember the price.
Oh,
so using
that
I came up with around 500 grams.
You can also just weigh yourself before and after eating it, and then just do this.
Then what happens to the skin?
Oh, well, that's a challenge. Oh, so I like your solution to figure out the weight. That's great. That's really fun.
Yeah.
What did it look like on the inside?
Oh, I forgot to draw that. It was like...
Now I'm also going to get another soursop for you.
Yeah, it was like a custard apple with less seeds.
Okay.
But a lot creamier. And it had this long strand, which looked fibrous, but was actually creamy.
Wow. That sounds great. Was it good?
Super.
Really? Ah, that's fun. I like it when a cool fruit or vegetable comes into the house. It's a really good time that it first makes a pit stop at the sketchbook before the dinner table.
Oh yeah.
When Carolyn goes out in our yard and gets a funky carrot, she comes running to me and says, like, Dad, you gotta draw this carrot. And, that's really fun. Oh, Let's see. You went back to the pond.
Yeah, here's some ducks. And that's a landscape eater.
Oh, nice. Love it. Just really quick, getting the gestures of these animals. The negative shapes around that swan are also so cool.
And at the same place, I spotted some fungus on a tree.
Ooh, is that about life size, or is that an enlargement or a reduction?
Reduction. It was about that big.
Interesting.
I don't know if this stuff is fungus. It looked like it, but this really stood out.
Yeah. And isn't that, again, getting to put the white down on that toned paper is so much fun.
Oh yeah.
In anticipation of Kenya, I just ran out the other day and got myself a couple of toned paper sketchbooks. So I'm about to do a big deep dive in those too. That's really fun.
Yeah. As for those are actually baby Canada geese.
Oh, in a little huddle, in a little snuggle huddle.
There were 11 of them.
Wow. Congratulations, Mama and Papa Goose. That is really cool. Wow. And they all cluster together like that. I wonder if there's sort of a group safety mechanism.
They were sleeping.
Mm-hmm.
That's why. When they woke up, they split up and started following their parents.
And then, is that a grebe that was swimming in the water there too?
No, I think that's a baby coot as well.
All right. Oh, that's really fun. I like the change in angle behind its crown and nape.
Done.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mine.
He has to share.
I did some studies on monochrome colors.
Ooh.
So
What medium are you using here?
just a bunch of cheap
Oh,
felt
so those are
Brush
just a bunch of
brush
pens.
pens,
Just like Tombow, but cheaper.
very cheap.
I like the way you put that tree behind the roof of the house and let the shape of the tree give you the shape of this bright roof instead of having to draw a line around the roof. That creating that edge by the darker background, really cool effect. Are you blending these with water then?
No,
Or a colorless blender?
no, nothing.
Wow. And those little branches in the shrubbery in the foreground, in the foliage in the foreground,
That's the jelly roll.
that's the jelly roll. Oh, yes. So so people notice how Arpan made the darks go all the way down to the ground. Really kind of hit that bottom level with some really dark shadows. So you feel that the bushes are really casting shadows, and then that also makes the branches pop out. The contrast of the branches really pop out in front of them. That's really
But these
effective.
the branches are only the jelly roll, but these are all, I mean, I haven't used jelly roll for these highlights. I just negative painted them
Oh, I love
for
it.
these ones.
I really get
Also
a
made a
sense of thick
similar one.
vegetation there.
This is a very small one actually. Similar.
Yes. Also, I really like the darker shadows on the undersides of those trees.
That's it.
Oh, yeah. Now, could I see that last one more time?
Oh,
Nice. People also folks notice what's going on here with the reflection in the water and what is making that work. there's that crisp line at the shore. And then notice that the sort of the shadows, the reflections are coming straight down from the objects that are casting them. Really effective. That's fun. Thank you.
Thank you, Jack.
Thank you.
Great to see you both.
We also brought this book.
Oh, you got that book. Isn't that fun?
Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing. And cheaper than yours.
Oh, you got your, so you've been also hitting the used bookstores?
eBay.
Oh, there you go.
Yes. And actually it's signed by Michael.
Really? Oh, that's fun. That's fun.
I bought it for £5.
Yep. You know, people don't know what they've got. That's what's great about used bookstores, that, you know,
Yes.
things like that will show up, which to us are deep inspiration. And most people who have these like, oh yeah, there's some drawings and paintings of, but once you've been doing this for a while, you look at those and then you realize, wow, those are such, there's some just really wonderful levels of thought going on in there.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
that's cool. I'm glad you're able to get that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Those,
Thanks
yeah,
for the
keep doing those experiments and those studies. They're, and just, you know, play with those. I'm really struck. I'm still remembering that the light on that roof of that building with the dark tree behind, how that pops that roof off. And just folks, think how tempting it would be to draw with your pen a dark line around the edge of the roof, right? And that would work. But the minute you put the dark tree behind there and let that be the white of the paper, then there's this bright reflection off of it. Really effective.
Can I suggest a book?
Yeah.
Yeah. I found it in a charity shop. You might know him. I mean, he's a British artist, David Bellamy.
First steps to finish paintings, watercolor landscape course. Could you do, let me minimize my screen and maybe just we can do a page flip of some of that. Oops, here we go. Could you show us a little bit of the inside of it?
Yeah, so
Wait, it's handling those
let me
trees.
just open the jacket one.
Ooh,
These are the full-scape paintings that he's drawn, and he's going over so these are some of his paintings.
wow.
But he does a step-by-step also in some of the paintings.
I love it when people really break down their approach.
So yeah, so you see something very simple and then he builds it up.
Yep.
And this is the finished one. Also he makes studies between what's a good composition, and he gives you exercises with a photographic reference what you can do with it. So there's a
This
tone
is-
and color.
This is useful.
There's some demonstration. So yeah, some of the sketches are really, paintings are amazing actually. The sketches.
Oh, there's little just single value studies. No,
me show you just
some
one mountain.
people's, their art books are kind of, they get to show off, you know, here are my paintings. And you kind of look at them and go, like, wow, you can paint well. But they're not breaking down what they do. This person looks like he's, oh, look at that.
Oh, it's a watercolor.
Ah, that's fun. This one, my from glancing at it from here, it looks like this person is really breaking down exactly what went into the thinking behind those strokes.
Yeah. There are some very simple ones also. But yeah, it's a quite a good resource for having some fun playing around.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Thank you.
That was
Thank
like a
you.
really, it's all about the other
Thanks for
folks
your
who have.
suggestions of the books.
Yeah.
Just that there's no place in the house. We're running short of bookshelves.
I mean, yeah, I agree with Ray Bonto there. Yeah, that's a good problem to have. That's a good problem to have.
Hope the world has more of these problems than what it faces now.
That's right. That's right. I think that, you know, step by step, we want to bring this world closer to that being the dilemma that we struggle with.
Yeah. Thank you, Jack.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Let's join Jack and see what is happening in his sketchbook. Let's see. There we go. Jack, hi there.
Hey.
Good to see you again.
Hey. Good to see you.
Let's see, what does it say on your shirt?
When I first got it, I thought it said craving ore, like the rock, but
Yeah.
it's the mountain is an M.
More of the great outdoors. Nice.
And so about the lunar eclipse, again, I wasn't able to see it because of clouds. Again. So I got a little more of a hint this time. I got to see it rise, but no part of the eclipse. So that was it when it rose. Gone into the cloud. Gone into the clouds.
Oh no! Ah! Yep. Here in the Bay Area, it was mostly overcast, but we had this just a few little moments where it kind of like there it is. But we did have the international cam on, and so there was some really cool stuff. I love the colors of that rising moon. When you see the moon coming up close to the horizon, because it's going through so much more atmosphere, you get those wonderful sunset colors that come out in the moon. That's
and
fun.
I found this little mushroom, and I named him Cool Cappy, like his cap. Cool Cappy, the mushroom dude.
Oh, Cool Cappy. Let's check Cool Cappy out. Oh, nice. Nice. I see measurements. I see you doing all these different angles. You've got your metadata in there. You're asking questions. You're asking different types of questions. So you're actually paying attention to what types kind of question classes you're asking. This is outstanding nature journaling. Yep.
And then I've
There's even a
also
measurement there with the metric system. So you just made me proud.
and we
Yeah,
got a new
friends don't let friends measure with the imperial system. Right.
and then we got a new bird feeder, which a lot of birds have been loving. And like just every day I kind of just anytime I see a bird at it, I just put a little, and I'm using that different system. So I'm doing birds not at the feeder and birds at the feeder. And I'm using that the
Oh yes. Yep. Great.
so I've had a lot of birds. Birds at the feeder, 3 squirrels, 4 Carolina wrens, 20 black-capped chickadees, 1 blue jay, 5 cardinals, 1 gray catbird, 1 American goldfinch, and then 3 squirrels. Not at the feeder, 3 turkey vultures, 5 blue jays, 7 brown thrashers, 2 house sparrows, 8 European starlings, 8 cardinals, 1 hawk. Oh my, I gotta count, my gosh. But yeah, it goes, I've seen a lot of birds. And then
Good job keeping track of the numbers.
some hummingbirds from a book I just did. Wanted to sketch a few hummingbirds, so I did those. And then
Oh,
iris that was blooming.
Oh, wow. Oh, so is this the same iris at 2 different points?
Yeah. So this is the like full thing. And then the younger iris that hadn't bloomed yet. I noticed that like one is already bloomed and then another will bloom. So there's basically 2 flowers generate from one. And that's the bud of the new one, the
And
younger one.
then you've got the measurement on that bud. So the next time you look at it. Oh, this is cool. This is really cool. And isn't it interesting when you start looking at something that carefully? Any little nuance, the little changes, your brain, your eye picks it up.
Yeah.
What were some of the most interesting questions that you came up looking at that one?
Well, I wonder why don't the 2 bloom at the same time? And then why are the petals sparkly? The petals, I've noticed this on daffodils too. The petals almost look like it's made out of sugary stuff, like a little peep you find at Easter. It almost looks like it's made out of that because it's so sparkly. So I'm wondering why that is. And then who is the pollinator? I usually have that question.
And you know, can you imagine? I wonder what that flower looks like in the ultraviolet spectrum. I wonder what those little reflectors look like also in UV. That's interesting.
And I was just geeking out with lots of animals on seeingbirds.com. I just realized I also have amphibians and every other type of animal. So I did a little alligator. And then I did some bobcats and a peregrine falcon.
Oh, really strong. Oh, the shape around that eye, the little bit of a shadow in that eye just looks, oh, really, really moody. That's fun. That's really fun.
Then, oh yeah, I also did some albatrosses and started a kingfisher.
Oh, good. I'm going to be knee deep in albatross at the end of this summer. A group of us are going over to the Galapagos, and there are albatross that will be nesting while we're there.
And the other day I was in Havity Greece, which is near the water, and there was this heron just sitting there, and he was really easy to sketch because he was on a post, just very still. And at one point, he took his leg and started scratching his chin.
Yeah, and they just do that for a little while, and you got the negative shape along the back there. Oh, and all these different poses and postures. Really good job moving. As the bird moves, so do you. Could we take a little look at that kingfisher too? There's my favorite bird. Yep, it's all head. Nice negative shapes. Nice negative shapes.
And then that's it.
Hey, Jack, some really strong observations there. And I really want to commend you for the way you are approaching your journaling. You've got your observations, you're asking questions, you're making connections, you're giving yourself projects like, you know, I'm going to look at this plant that's blooming and I'm going to get it in the next stage. And then here's the next stage. I really like the way that you are thinking and using the journal just to turn all these ideas over and around in your head. That's really fun.
And I had one more question.
Yeah.
I almost forgot. Where do you get your toned paper sketchbooks? Because I was looking for that and I couldn't really find any.
Yeah, I've got these ones. Let's see, is it in here? No, it's in the next room. I'm using the Strathmore toned paper sketchbook. If you want, let me just run into the next room. I'm going to grab it so you can see what's on the cover. And then if you are looking for it online, you can spot it like, that's the one. Because these ones are nice. I'll be right back. Meanwhile, show everybody else something cool that's going on in your journal.
All right. Nothing that recent. Oh yeah, I never finished this. Why am I drawing a blank on the name? But a tree out by our kitchen window is blooming and it looks incredible. These big balls of flowers. And I noticed that the stem is very sticky. I don't know why that is. And all the little stamens that have the pollen on them all face one petal. Rhododendron. Yeah, thank you, Ben. All the stamens that have the pollen on them face this one petal, and the petal has only one petal on the flower has yellow spots on it, which is
Ooh.
weird.
Oh, that's cool. And how interesting. I want to go geek out on a rhododendron now. That's really cool. So here's the one that I've been using. So it's the Strathmore toned gray paper.
Cool.
Let's see, it's the 400 series. It's a toned gray book, and it has got an off brown cover.
Is that hardback or like floppy?
No, it's hardback.
Cool.
So, you know, with a hardbound sketchbook, you can, when you're out sketching, it's easier to tuck it up against your body and without having it kind of fall apart.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jack. Yeah, really good stuff going on in that journal. Let's take a look at what's happening in Susan's journal, or Susan's explorations and adventures. Add you into the spotlight here, and you can now unmute. Hey there, it's good to see you.
Hey, good to see you. Welcome back.
I'm looking forward to doing a deep dive into numbers at the upcoming, not this week's, but very soon.
First.
Week after.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, it's going to be great. Yes.
So for folks who don't know, I want to invite everybody to the Nature Journal Educators Forum, where we're going to be doing a kind of a dive into best practices with words, best practices with numbers, and best practices with pictures. And Susan's going to be helping us out with our numbers one. And so we're going to go deep geek.
It's going to be very exciting. Yes, I'm super excited. Yeah, but got a little bit of numbers, but this past week, it's been all Lepidoptera all the time.
Ooh.
I did say before that I am well, not maybe a little bit of a birder, but a butterflyer and a mother and all this. But so I can't read the buttons here. But yeah, so I went back to that preserve. It's got the cool like limestone like fissures all through it. Very
yeah,
cool.
yeah.
And I was, because it has really interesting spring wildflowers that I mostly don't see anywhere else, at least certainly not in the Albany pine bush, and which is a very dry kind of habitat. And this area is quite different. So I'm just very curious about that. But anyway, so I was looking at some of these very interesting wildflowers that initially I was sort of having a hard time distinguishing, because they're both sort of tall sticks of white tiny flowers, but when you look close, they're quite different. I've been having a lot of issues with going out someplace and then there being a storm, but that's what happens this time of year. But yeah, so we got this two-leaf miter wort, which took me an embarrassingly long time to realize why they call it two-leaf miter wort. But there you are, and it's very, it was like a little bit of time before the storm came, so I didn't quite get as much of a deep dive as I would have liked to. But like they got like different shaped leaves that come up on separate stems, and then the leaves that come up on the stem that has the flower are different, but yeah, and then very, very cool flower. It's hard to see here, but very fringy sort of petals, very fun. Yeah, and then these ones here, slightly bigger flower. I didn't have my ruler yet, so I didn't get to didn't measure it exactly.
Okay, we'll
but
a little bit of slack.
Now, that package from John Muir Laws that just arrived a few days ago. It's been very
With the
fun.
goniometer?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's dangerous. It's gonna be dangerous.
Oh, I've been having all kinds of fun with that. Yeah, and the binoculars.
Oh, the Pentax papilios.
Yes. Oh my goodness. It's so I had some other binoculars that my aunt gave me, and she was pretty well meaning, but you know what? These ones are so much better. And I've seen so many butterfly nose hairs. If they have nose hairs, which they don't.
Or an
Oh my
eyeball
goodness.
hair? Can you see
Changed
the
my
eyeball
life.
hair?
No, because I couldn't find any frosted elfins, and the Carter blues don't. But we'll get into that.
Oh.
So we're looking for them. The frosted elfins should still be out. But anyhow, so then I was looking at one of my favorite trees, the striped maple, which has really, really big leaves, but it's an understory tree. I again kind of ran out of room to get the stripiness of the trunk, which is very fun. But I've been really interested in maple flowers. And I've been sketching some red maple flowers previously, which the male and female flowers are different trees most of the time. But earlier on, there were some really cool observations I was making about, I found a tree that actually had flowers that had both male and female parts. But anyhow, these ones, I think I determined, what did I say? I think it's does not appear to have a pistil as far as I could tell, but I couldn't find any other trees nearby that have female flowers. So very fascinating. But yes, it's a very cool tree. But I was looking more closely at it, looking up at the top, and it's not a very big tree because they're really understory trees. And I found,
oh my goodness.
So here's the thing, right? So Veda has been very encouraging about trying to put more people, like, I'm not comfortable drawing people, I think I've mentioned, but you know what though? Turns out if you keep doing it, it does get less scary.
Yeah.
So it was like not entirely scary to draw this. And I did feel that I did need to depict the correct reaction to finding a silk moth.
Oh, that is so sweet. I love the glasses flying, the journal tossed into the air.
I took a bit of artistic liberty because I did not, in fact, drop the glasses or the book, but
that,
So we are going to watch it, and we are going to see. It should be, I believe, a cecropia moth, because as far as I can tell, the only silk moth of that size, and form of cocoon that size, that eats maple, that doesn't, that make a cocoon on the twig as opposed to in the leaf litter, would be a cecropia moth. So fingers crossed. I've been keeping it in a safe place. Doesn't get too hot or too cold, and hopefully, I think June it should come out. So there's going to be so much nature journaling. It's going to be amazing. But
that's fun. Well, but before we do that is really exciting.
Yes.
What a also just a delightful page. But let's go back and just see those botanical studies for just a moment.
Yes.
I want people to notice something that you look at, like, oh wow, that's so cool. But notice that there is a system that Susan is using very deliberately here. And if you look at these botanical studies, front, side, and habit, front, side, and habit, front, side, and habit. So the flower, you're seeing it from the front view, and then she turns and draws it from the side view. And the habit is that kind of backed up view where it gives you kind of the sense of the flower as a thing. And you see that also with the maple flowers. There's front, side, and habit. So this front, side, and habit has become a habit, I'm guessing, for you.
Yeah, well,
like the natural way to investigate
from Ivea and all these lessons on plant families, I'm just going to find the red maple. Where is there's several pages?
But if you can,
here was the initial red maple from a while back, which I was not exactly doing the front, side, and habit, but I was, trying to get the sort of general shape here. This was quite fun because it took me a lot of searching to find a red maple tree where the flowers were close enough to the ground for me to actually get close to them and see. And this was actually the course of several days. This was, when was this? March, April. But yes, this was a lot of fun. But they had quite different flowers. But you can see how there's a resemblance. And I missed my window on the Norway maple, which are all common street trees. But I just got too busy, and they're all gone now. But that is the flowers are gone. But
next year it will not get past you.
Yes, next year. And I did have a chance to look at it closely, but for about like 5 minutes before I had to run and do something. Yeah. So one thing I'm actually kind of like working on like mentally is I I always want to get like all of the detail. And even if it's really tiny, I want to go into detail. And then sometimes I will kind of intimidate myself out of trying to draw something because I'm like, oh, I'm not going to get all the detail in this thing, or I don't have time to do all the detail or whatever. And then I just won't draw it. Or I'll try to draw it and I'll get about this far into it and not finish, and then just never finish. So I'm trying to consciously work on like doing something simpler that still tells me something. So trying to just like be okay with the fact that my flowers on here are little blobs.
Yep.
Because then I'm going to draw the actual flower over here. And so then we'll just know that all of these flowers are actually like this.
Right.
And, you know, and then I get kind of the structure and, you know, and like, I've got a little more detail in here, but it was trying to just like, let's just like make something that looks kind of, that has the right shape, because then we understand. And the fact is, if you have too much detail, you can't understand what the overall shape is anyway. So, of course, when I was doing that, I kind of got a little overzealous with the proportions here. And in fact, striped maple does have big leaves, but they are not bigger than my head. So
That's okay. That's okay.
Yeah.
But this also there's so much just delightful energy to that.
I was having a lot of fun with that.
So much fun.
So
But
when I got home, I took some more careful studies, and here's your front side, your top and side again.
Nice.
And I intend, since it's not emerged yet, I've got lots more observation to do and things to write down, but I was sort of running out of room in this book. But yeah, so the big question, is it viable? I don't know. I have no idea. There's no emergence hole, so it's not an old cocoon, at least not one that already emerged from it. But there are some little holes and cracks in it. And so I hope that that's just a case of, you know, silk sort of cracking as it dries over the winter, and it will still be viable in there. I don't know if that lets any parasites or, you know, little wasps in. I might get a bunch of wasps instead of a silk moth. We'll find out.
And if you do, that will
be interesting. Yes, and I will draw them. That would be great. I mean, you know, I do love my silk moths, but you know, wasps that parasitize silk moths are also really cool. So yeah, I was thinking a lot of. I
got a couple of fat and juicy tachinid flies out of a sphinx moth caterpillar.
Ooh, that's fun. Well, they were probably so fat and juicy because those caterpillars are nice and fat and juicy. Not quite as fat as these guys.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So a friend of mine the last couple of years has been really, when she started finding caterpillars in her garden, she got really excited about raising them. And I've also been excited about doing that, going on that journey with her, but not wanting to raise them myself because I was afraid I would just like kill them the way that I neglect my houseplants. But I think I'm gonna have to. So she and I are gonna like do some trips, and we're gonna try and find some more caterpillars. And she was pretty jealous because she wants a cecropia moth, and I was like, I'm keeping this one. But yeah. So and then meanwhile,
so also kind of a fun thing with just wanted to say, if let's say on drawing a leaf, if you're feeling this, you know, this pull to just put in crazy detail.
Oh yeah, this was really hard. This was the hardest leaf I ever drew.
You can give yourself, you can also just give yourself permission to, you know, just draw a little circle over some part of it. And in that, go nuts on detail. And everywhere else, just suggest it.
Yeah, well, I've been trying to do that. Yeah. Yeah, well, and in this case, I was like, okay, I could draw the leaf, but no, we're gonna just make it just enough to understand how it relates to the thing, because the cocoon is the interesting part. And this was really challenging. I need to go back and sort of practice more, you know, sculpting the shape as you've called it, trying to get the lights and darks. I think I did it pretty well. And then when I tried to do it again with these, like, I think it kind of worked. I was trying to keep it simple, but this was sort of the top view, and I don't think you really get a sense of like what's the three-dimensionality of it. So I had to think about how I can do that. Maybe by sort of like fading out the parts that are lower down or something. I don't know. But yeah, notice centimeters, by the way.
Yeah. Yes. Respect for metric.
Don't use decimeters, but we'll get there. I'll have to. If the cecropia moth does in fact emerge intact, it will have to get measured in decimeters because they are huge.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, you have to get out your meter stick to.
Oh yeah. Okay. So that is a little fun here. More of this preserve. it's really, I'm just very fascinated by this. I was talking in the chat about this whole thing, this question of like, why are there different trees growing in different places? There's this like very abrupt transition where the beginning part of the trail is all these old eastern hemlocks, not poison hemlock bed, don't worry. All these eastern hemlocks that are really nice looking. And there's some undergrowth and there are some wildflowers, but mostly it just feels very dark and a lot of very kind of sparse ground. And then you get sort of along a certain way, and now it's all these hardwoods and there's like tons of them. It's all green underneath and there's just grasses and things growing up and all between the wildflowers and things. And they're all small. And one thing I'm really interested in is this. So, well, okay, hang on, right, just a minute, I gotta look. Okay.
So while she is out, folks, just want to suggest, just notice how much fun Susan has with geeking out on stuff.
If you haven't seen this book,
Reading the Forested Landscape,
it's amazing. I mean,
Really?
it is highly specific to, like, the details in here is highly specific to New England. And New York is not technically among the states that are covered, but it's really has a lot of the same history. This guy Tom Wessels is an ecologist, and he's amazing. There's some YouTube videos that he's done. He's got this like long beard, and he sort of goes through the forest. He's like a forest druid. I mean, he's just great. And he's done some videos that are covering the same material as this. And so what this is about is understanding some really specific details of the natural history and human history of the areas and the ecosystems of the Northeast in particular, and using that knowledge to piece together, when you're in a forested area, piecing together the history of it. And I mean, I like, there's so much in here that it's I have to go through it like every 6 months and try and get more out of it. But like he talks about, so most of the forests and things in this area have at one time in the last few hundred years been cleared.
Yeah.
For farmland, for logging, and all those kinds of things. And then as people kind of moved, there's some areas of old growth forest, but a lot not. And as people have kind of moved out west to farm and all that, then a lot of areas were left to grow back to forest. And so the forests that we have now are a couple hundred years at most. A lot of them that it looks like a really dense forest, but when you look at your base, oh, the trees are actually really small, because it's like less than 100 years old. And you can look at that and you can actually see from the topography of the landscape and from like what kinds of trees and things, like what the history of that was before. And so this book is amazing. It's like, are there rock walls running through the forest, which there are in a lot of places? What does that tell you about what people were doing? Maybe they were using it for farmland or pasture or whatever. Can you tell the difference between a place that was used for pasturing animals versus hay fields versus crop planting? And you can tell the difference.
Wow.
And it's so great. And one thing I think you really like, only just occurred to me. So each chapter has like an illustration at the front that was made by an illustrator who does to really highlight the features that are being discussed in the chapter. So this one is about of junipers and weird apples. It's like every time I read this, I learn something new. So that's making me really pay attention to when I'm in these forests. There's a lot of places around here that have like trails and things, and it was usually like somebody had a farm or something there up until 50 years ago, and then they let the trees all grow back, and then they donated it to the county or to the Mohawk Hudson Land Conservancy or whatever, and they made some trails. And you have this forest, but this forest is actually really young, and it's really interesting to see all these different things. So that's getting me paying attention to what of those clues I can see. So one thing I had noticed in this preserve, which was actually previously owned by a husband and wife team of ecologists who apparently were really interested in mosses. And sure enough, there's lots of interesting moss that grows in this preserve that I don't know much about. I need to learn more about. So it's anyway, so that's why I was sort of looking at this. And I'm like, yeah, why is there this transition? And why are these trees bigger? I don't know if hemlocks grow faster and that's why they're bigger than these ones, or if these are actually older and this is younger, And why is it so short? And then there is a rock wall that runs through kind of the middle of this area. So does that mean that that area was farmed and was cleared more recently? And you know, I don't know. So it'd be fun to try and figure that out. So I don't want to go on for long, but
wait, hold on. Yeah, show us a little bit of your.
Sorry, I said it was all butterflies all the time, and then I went on about this preserve.
That's right.
Yeah. So, well, this was okay. This was actually. Well, okay, I'm going to cover up the actual date, but it was my birthday.
Oh, it's your birthday.
So,
happy birthday, Susan.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, so this was going out to the Albany Pine Bush as a great birthday present. The Carner Blues are out.
Oh.
And the Carner Blues are
this up study of the spots on the hind wing.
Yeah. So here's the thing about the Carner Blues. More than any other butterfly I've ever met. First of all, they love puddling. It's actually, I was going along the trail and there's this guy lying on the trail with a super long lens camera and he's taking pictures. And I said, there were like a whole bunch of Carner Blues all puddling on the ground. So I got my camera out and took some pictures, and then I actually sat down with my sketchbook to try and sketch them. And the guy says, "Wow, you're sketching this?" I said, "Yeah." He says, wouldn't it be easier to draw from a photo?" And I said, "Well, let me tell you about that." So
that's great.
Yeah, so that was fun. I was having a lot of fighting with the gouache, but I think I sort of pummeled it into submission eventually. So that was fun. Still working on getting that shape, the wings exactly right, because there's a very specific shape that when I look at them, I'm like, yep, that's the shape. And then I don't always quite do it. But here's the thing: is more than any other butterfly I've ever met, these guys love to sit on your finger or your shoes. They really like shoes. And if you want to coax them on your finger, the very, very best thing is to offer them their favorite treat.
Smash banana.
Armpit sweat.
Armpit sweat.
They'll come to your finger, they'll stay on your finger for ages. So it's a great opportunity if you want to study a very tiny butterfly up close and have it hold more or less still for you. You can do that. So I was actually drawing this guy while he was sitting on my finger and trying to get his, so I was trying to get the vein. Well, I used the non-photo blue for the veins, so now you can't see him. But yeah, so I was trying to like really get the shapes and everything like that, and get the colors, what he was doing and everything. Also trying to just do some sort of very, very quick depictions of other butterflies and count them. There's some counting, just like young Jack is doing. Yeah. So so they're out for about 3 weeks. I got like 2 weeks left to go out there, spend some more quality time with them, and really see just like how well can I learn that butterfly. And then they're going to come out again in July, but I'm not going to be here in July, so I'm going to have to miss them.
Got it.
But this will be like really cool. If I can, I'm going to be going out west, and they're a subspecies of the Melissa blue, which can be found out west. So maybe I'll find their cousins, the Melissa blue, and we'll see. Yes, that was a lot of fun. And I also then I felt he was being a bit cheeky while I was trying to draw him. So this is, I don't know how well you can see, I gotta add some color here, but I started drawing a little picture of what was going on. So I'm on my finger. I mean, I need to add some color here. My finger, I'm trying to draw him. And then he proceeds to fly onto the sketchbook and start giving me critiques on my sketching. So and he was really quite rude, I feel. He was very skeptical of my skills and things. So everyone's a critic, but and then he went onto my paint rag and started trying to puddle on that. I said, no, we're not doing that. I don't. There's no cadmium in there, but I don't know what else is in there. So I poked it back on my finger for some more sweat. So so they're fun. So I recommend to everybody go find I do feel our special Carner Blues that are very, very rare and endangered are the best, but go find your local blue butterfly. And maybe they will be cooperative ones that will come and puddle on your finger and drink your sweat and enjoy it. The interesting thing is the other local species of blue butterflies that we have here, they'll puddle. I've seen eastern tailed blues, which are very common. I've seen them puddling. They will not come to your finger. I don't know if they're just more skittish, because like sometimes you can try and like sneak up on them and try and coax them, but they won't. But even then, like Carner Blues will just come and land on you, and the eastern tailed blues won't. So I don't know what it is about, like, if they have differences in their needs as far as minerals or what. It's very curious, but very cool. So yeah.
That is really
Yeah.
fun. I also want to, Avea is just loving your sort of delightful, playful interaction
Mhm.
with these things and sort of finding the story behind them. And also part of that's the story of our interactions with people, and let those
Mhm.
sorts of details come into your journal.
Mhm.
That's really fun. And those your butterflies feel like live butterflies instead of all those dead butterflies with spread.
Well, they're not doing this. Is the thing. They're not doing jumping jacks.
That's right. That's
They're
right.
doing this.
Exactly.
So, actually, though, blue butterflies do that almost sometimes when they're really spreading their wings out. So,
Nice.
but so there's one more lepidopteran thing. You can't see it till next week.
Oh, okay.
There's some
All right.
numbers involved.
Numbers involved. All right. I'm looking
Yeah,
forward to this.
a lot of fun.
So I just want to point out to people how much fun Susan is having playing with her brain in nature. And the journal is that the wonderful thing about a journal is it just kind of gives you permission to slow down and let these stories unfold. Thank you so much for sharing that. I've got a little photo to share here with you. So this is a dead butterfly here that I'm drawing. This is a live one that has landed here. Here's one flying by.
Wow.
Here is I'm sweaty.
Mhm.
And,
Love it.
this is the advantage of sweaty clothes, right?
Another one in the corner.
But thought you'd appreciate that.
I mean, I do. This must have been Ecuador, right?
That's right. That was Ecuador.
I mean, you're drawing all these wonderful birds, but I mean, you see, if it were me, it would have been like a couple of birds here and there, and then all the butterflies.
All the butterflies.
But I think I guess it's just an embarrassment of riches. So
Yeah, it's hard to know who to fall in love with, and we can be fickle like that. And give yourself permission to you don't have to be like a birder or and just do one thing.
Well, I joke about that because I mean, like, obviously I have fallen down the rabbit hole. I do have to admit that. But
so which maybe what I can do is we can just sort of end on that note. I have a little poem to share about just sort of letting your heart be fall in love with the butterfly or whatever is going. And this is just it's a playful, beautiful little poem called Aimless Love by Billy Collins. And he writes, "This morning as I walked along the lake shore, I fell in love with a wren. And later in the day with a mouse the cat had dropped under the dining room table. In the shadows of the autumn evening, I fell for a seamstress still at her machine in a tailor's window. And later for a bowl of broth, steam rising like smoke from a naval battle. This is the best kind of love, I thought, without recompense, without gifts or unkind words, without suspicion or silence on the telephone. The love of the chestnut, the jazz cap, and one hand on the wheel. No lust, no slam of the door. The love of the miniature orange tree, the clean white shirt, the hot evening shower, the highway that cuts across Florida. No waiting, no huffiness, no rancor. Just a twinge every now and then. For the wren who has built her nest on a low branch overhanging the water. And for the dead mouse still dressed in his light brown suit. But my heart is always standing on its tripod, ready for the next arrow. After I carried the mouse by the tail to a pile of leaves in the woods, I found myself standing at the bathroom sink, gazing down affectionately at the soap. And that is Aimless Love by Billy Collins. Actually, my recollection of it, that there is another line at the end of that, but the one I was reading from didn't have that. Ah, that's right. So I just found another version of it online here. And this one hasn't cut off the end of the poem. After I carried the mouse by the tail to a pile of leaves in the woods, I found myself standing at the bathroom sink, gazing down affectionately at the soap, so pliant and soluble, and so at home in its pale green soap dish that I could feel myself falling again as I felt its turning in my wet hands and I caught the scent of lavender and stone. So my thought for folks for today is to let's go out and bring your journal with you and go fall in love. Go fall in love with something, some little moment, and just be intentional about just sort of the feeling of opening yourself up to this, and be okay with it, and let that connection that comes through attention, see if it can take you to a deeper relationship with whatever it is, the mouse or the soap or the soursop. And thank you all for being with us. Again, Avea, thank you so much. I look forward to seeing both of you in the upcoming numbers workshop, and we've got a lot of fun things between then and now as well. Take care, everybody, and thank you for being with us today.
Thank you, Jack.